All right, guys. Today we're here to talk about the San Jose Sharks, where their season ended up last year and where they're sitting now that the draft is finished and free agency is underway. I mean, what can you really say about these guys? They had the least amount of wins in the NHL last season, um, but they didn't finish bottom. They finished 29th because they seem to be able to take it to overtime quite regularly. So they were well accustomed to being in games, even though they conceded a lot of goals. They were in a lot of high scoring affairs. They got blown out a couple of times, but they seem to be able to take it to a lot of teams, but just never really able to finish it. Which is what ultimately led to them only having 22 wins for the 82 game season. Um, but I think we all saw it coming. I don't think anyone out there was sitting there going, yeah, San Jose finishing 29th. Real shocker. It's clear that they need a rebuild. I don't think a retool would suffice. I think it needs to be absolutely ripped to pieces and start again. Um, and they had some really good years. Made the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, not good enough to taste that ultimate glory. But yeah, look, unfortunately for the likes of Logan Couture, who's been a really good servant of the San Jose Sharks, Eric Carlson, they're probably not going to be there by the time the Sharks are good again. And honestly, I think that they kind of need to make way for the Sharks to actually get up and go again. I think they need to be turned into either future draft picks or prospects for these guys to really go anywhere because Logan Couture and even Thomas Hurdle, Custom, they're just like I said, they're not going to be there by the time Sharks are good again. So you may as well try and get them to a team that they can contend with, and get something for them, get some prospects, get someone that will help them in the rebuild. But we've got Jaden with us here who's going to basically take us through the lineup as basically acquired through Cap Friendly and then go from there.
Yes, this is cap friendly lineup. Um, Not our opinions. It's just to help get an understanding of how the teams roster out. We got Barabanov on the left wing, Couture in the middle, and Kunin on the right wing. Eklund, Hurdle, and Duclair, a second line. Duclair they traded for. It was actually a pretty good trade. It is a 1 year UFA. They traded a player who played worse and is a 1 year UFA and a fifth round for him. It was a good trade overall, and they can trade him at the deadline for more assets going forward if it doesn't work, if they can't re-sign him. And he's been playing like a second line winger. He used to be a third line winger, but he has been playing like a second line winger, so hopefully he can do that and bounce back from his injury. You got Lindblom, Stern, and LeBanc on the third, and Smith, Pedersen, and Zedelin, who they acquired from New Jersey, on the fourth line. Um, Lacking really in depth there, missing. It's pretty much just their depth. Like I don't mind their top six. It's just it's not going to pan out probably long term in the future, but it's their bottom six where I feel like they needed just a couple more adjustments there. Defenders wise, they got Carl Burrows, Eric Carlson, obviously the big one that's getting talked about if they move him or not. You got Ferraro, Benning, Vlasic, and Simek. So it's interesting. A couple of expensive contracts on the D there with Carlson and Vlasic, with who have some term. You got to eat some of that salary. I know they don't want to eat any of it. I'd say you eat about 4 mil, make it a 7.5 mil contract for the other team, and then just reap in the assets that you can get for that. That's what I would do. You've obviously got Logan Couture. I think he's got a 3 team can only be traded to list. Basically, submits a list of 3 teams he would only go to. That's his list, so that's very limiting. Um, So yeah,
Yeah,
making
especially if they're gonna take all 8 million. Like
yeah,
if they're not gonna retain any of it, $8 million is a lot to move. Like we already saw it with Eric Carlson. Like how are you gonna get Eric Carlson out of your team for 11.5? And then it's like, okay, now you've got Logan Couture try and move at 8 million. And it's not like these guys are only signed for 1 year or 2 years or
yep.
whatever.
They got
They're
4 years
signed
left.
for four.
Yep,
So yeah, I mean, even Vlasic is signed for the next
three
three.
years.
So
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be
so
hard to make
yeah,
these moves. You got to get them done though if you want to be serious about a rebuild. Maybe you keep one contract on and just eat that, but that's it. I don't think you can keep the Carlson one because it's just so much. But moving on to the
mm,
goalies, you got Karkinen and Blackwood, another player they acquired from New Jersey. Good little tandem here. Like it's basically 1A, 1B, maybe a 2A, 2B type situation. It's yeah, like they're hoping like they're both 26. They can still develop into something. Blackwood still could develop if he gets over his injuries or anything and into a starting goalie. He's shown that he has potential. It just
I
hasn't
think
panned
they've
out for
both
him.
shown.
Yeah, they both have.
Yeah, I think they've both shown promise. It's just they've both also had their moments, like Blackwood with his injuries. Yeah, like I think it's for these guys, it's basically just you're both young, you'd fit our rebuild model realistically, and if you don't pan out, well, you're not signed for that much, you're not signed for long term. We could get rid of you, it doesn't really matter, and we'll go elsewhere. I think that's probably the best area of San Jose right now, and the
mm,
least I'm concerned,
yep.
because if either of these work out, well, they could sign them long term on a decent deal, and bam, you've got your goaltender for the next 5 years. Because I still think Mackenzie Blackwood, if he gets himself right and fit, he can be a fantastic goaltender. I think that the biggest problem with him is his hip injury, and generally with hip injuries, it can really destroy a goaltender's career.
Mm.
But yeah, like it's a basically it's a no. There's no downfalls to having
Yeah,
either of
it's
these
almost no
goalies. Like,
risk. The only risk they
mm,
have is that they on the end of their contracts the UFAs. That's the only risk. Um,
mm,
Other than that, it's basically taking a bargain. If these guys work out, then we make bang for buck. If they don't, it doesn't matter because we're in a rebuild anyway. So yeah, it's smart little goaltending situation there. I think something to give notches there. Just on the scratches, they got Ryan Carpenter who they've signed in. Got Martin Court who has to be re-signed, and then just McDonald as well. So that's just some of their little depth there. Um, Interesting in the dead cap that they're still paying off Brent Burns, so still helping Carolina to a cup in a sense. So when you think about it, like you got 11.5 in Carlson, then you got 2.7 in Brent Burns. Like it's basically a $14.2 million defender right there in a sense.
mhm.
When you start thinking about things like that, and it's very expensive. You got Martin Jones they have to pay off for quite the near foreseeable future, and you got Bolsas as well, pretty unnoteworthy. Just on the
It's,
notable lot, what was that?
that's one player that I wouldn't want to have on a buyout is Martin Jones.
Oh,
Like, I don't get me wrong, I know he's shown some weird little glimpses. Like, did it for Seattle this year.
mm,
Um, but just he's never been that player, and like when they signed him to that contract, I was like, it's gonna bite you in the ass. Like he's not that goaltender,
yeah,
and it did exactly that. They had to buy him out, and now they're wearing, you know, hat hit, which honestly, I don't think he's worth any more than 2.9. Like I think that buyout there of that dead cap, you're paying to not even have him. Like I wouldn't be paying that to have him, let
mm,
alone paying it to not. Like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it was a
The vice versa
poor
is
move.
that they do get Karkin and Blackwood as their goaltenders, so it works out in the end. Though they're not at the cap. You got 4.7 mil free, but if they do get at the cap, then that will look really really bad. Just in their notable losses, they lose Chris Coelho to New Jersey free agency, um, Poilot to Dallas, James Reimer goes to Detroit. Not really a big loss there, seeming they got Blackwood, and Veal to Winnipeg. So honestly, didn't lose too much this season. Probably the biggest being Chris Coelho to the New Jersey, and that's just a depth piece because obviously Reimer's been replaced. So nothing to note there. Just last thing in regards to how they're doing in the draft, they didn't really have a first round pick last year. Like they got 27th overall. They had number 11. They traded down for 27, 35, and 45, as Nick was saying earlier off camera. But they do pick up Will Smith this year, which hopefully does help replace the Logan Couture probably departure in the future. Either he expires his contract or whatnot. And just someone we haven't talked about that probably they need to look at trading as well is Thomas Hurdle, though I know he has a no move clause. But he is 29 and doesn't really line up with their rebuild as well. So basically, their three biggest pieces look like they need to be shipped.
And that's where I'm concerned. Like this is probably apart from I'm gonna say Philadelphia. This is probably yeah. These guys in Philadelphia are probably the two teams I worry about most because I don't know where they're headed. Like it's so hard to see these guys being any good anytime soon. Like I can see, I know, we've already done the videos on Anaheim and all the rest of that, but I can see Anaheim, Columbus, and Chicago on the way up a lot sooner than I can see San Jose. And those teams finished below the Sharks this year. Like I think that win, the fact that they had the least wins in the NHL is it's so accurate because I do believe that they're the worst, probably the worst team in the NHL. I sorry, Sharks fans, that's just my opinion there. I think they've got some really great players. Like I love Couture. I think I've loved watching him over the
Yeah.
years. Since he's been there, he's probably one of my favorite players to watch in the NHL. I don't know, I've always admired the way he goes about things. Thomas
He's always
Hurdle's
played good against the
been a good,
Devils, our team.
mm,
He's always
yeah,
played good against Devils.
but yeah, like Thomas Hurdle, really good player. Eric Carlson, he's a great offensive defenseman. I
He's a
don't
winger,
think
but
he's a
yeah.
good defense. Yeah, I don't think
Hmm.
he's a good defenseman. But, like they're great players and they've been great players. And there's a reason why the Sharks were successful and in the playoffs and made the Stanley Cup. And these players were a part of that. But heck, those contracts that they've been signed to, like they're contracts that you'd be thinking they were signed to for a team to be winning, not down the bottom needing a rebuild. And that's what's ultimately killed them. Is they've still got 4 years left of Eric Carlson. They've still got 4 years of Couture. They've got 7 years of Thomas Hurdle. I know, I get it, and all the rest of it, but signing him to that contract, you don't want to lose a player like Hurdle for nothing. So it sort of worked, but also he's the one that I think they keep just purely because I don't think you can get rid of all of your pieces and they've got to keep someone, right? So I think they keep Hurdle, even though I think he's probably the better of the lot because of his age and all the rest of it. But yeah, to me, you've got to cut this team and do it quick. So they need to move Carlson on. They need to move Couture on. And I think, honestly, I know they said they don't want to eat any of the salary cap, but
You have to.
they've got to.
You have to.
No one's taking Carlson for 11.5. No one's taking Couture for $8 million. Like, you've got to, for me, next year, you got to get rid of Lasic. You got to get rid of Carlson. You got to get rid of Couture, and you've got to take as much as you can. Like I know you've got these guys for longer, so you could knock them off one by one. So you could get rid of Lasic, take up 3.3 million dollars of his cap or whatever. It's hard to see how much they'd offer for Vlasic, given who wants to take this guy for 3.5. Um, But yeah, like even if you just got rid of Lasic and Carlson, I mean Carlson's holding some pretty good value. He just won the Norris.
He
He
shouldn't
had a
have, but yeah.
phenomenal season. Yeah, well, I mean, if we're talking
I gotta get my
defense
chirps in
and
when I get my
playing,
chirps in. I absolutely think it's the most disgusting thing that he won the Norris.
look,
It's
I,
it's
I,
it's not a
I agree with you.
defender's trophy. I just have to say it. I'm
I,
sorry.
I agree with you. I think they put way too much on the offensive side of these defensemen, but it is what it is. He won a Norris. That also means that he's got some, it raises his stocks. So there'll be some teams after him, but the Sharks have to be willing to take and wear some of that cap because no team who is going to go for Eric Carlson has $11.5 million to spend on Eric Carlson.
Hmm.
So you've got to be willing to go, all right, well, what do we have to meet? We don't want to take the 5.75. I get that. But, is it 4 million? What do you have to wear? You're not going to be any good for the next 4 seasons. That's a given. I can't see the Sharks being in the playoffs again for at least 5 seasons. So
Hmm.
for me, it's, you know, wear $4 million of Carlson's, wear $4 million of Couture's, and yeah, like you've got to do something. Like there's got to be some sort of give there, whether it's even, you know, trying to include another team to help retain some of that salary. So, you might not get as much in return as you like, but you're also not having to hold all of that salary and you're still getting something to help you. Because I just personally, I don't think holding on to Couture or or Carlson or Vlasic is going to help them moving forward. Hurdle, his contract being $8 million, he's only 29.
He's got a no move
By
clause.
the
It's up to him if he wants
His
to move.
no
I don't.
move clause, it's tough, right? But also, you think about it, in 5 years' time, when they're probably ready for playoffs, he's only 34. He's still got a few years left in his contract. It's probably not the worst one to hold on. He can also help, the likes of William Eklund and there are other prospects coming through. Will Smith, as you mentioned, a couple of the other prospects they've got coming up. If they, those that can make it, he's there to guide them. And I think you do need that veteran presence. So I do expect Hurdle to sort of stay on board and be that one.
Yeah.
But they need to
I would
turn
personally
something.
like to move Hurdle. Personally, if I was to do the rebuild, I don't think he can, and I don't even know if he would want to waive it. Especially when that contract ends when he's like 36. So it's not the best looking contract either in that regards. Yeah, you got Logan Couture. You're gonna have to eat that cap because he's only got 3 teams he wants to go to, and you would suspect that it's a playoff contender that's pretty much at the cap already. So you have to eat probably half that. I would eat probably 4 million of Eric Carlson. If you're really that stingy on the money, you get, like you said, you rope in a third team. You take a little bit less in regards to your picks and your prospects, but then you get them to hold 2 million or something like that. Um, that's kind of where you have to go about it. Vlasic, it's going to be a very hard thing to move if they are going to move that one. But if they do move those, one thing allows all their depth to move up. So people like Will Smith can play earlier. Maybe the picks that we're probably going to sit, first or second line in the AHL can come up and see how they develop. And honestly, I think it completely depends on what they get for the assets here. But I feel like they could be in the playoffs in 4 years. I know you said 5. I'd say around 4, but that's completely based on dependence on what they get for the assets going here. Like I think they've only got their firsts for the next 3 years. They've got no other team firsts. I'll just have a quick check. They've only got New Jersey's second, which is conditional. This year, well, 2024, they have no third, so they don't really have picks. Not like Chicago that we talked about earlier that has picks galore. Arizona's been getting picks galore, so yeah, I feel like you got to sell these assets. You got to build up your farm of draft picks, and then over the next 2 years, just recruit best available. Don't worry about position, just best available, and that's how you build your team. And look, they got a lot of dead cap, like 6 mil this year, 4.3 mil. That's doable though. And if you move these big contracts, they're going to be near the bottom, the floor.
Yeah, I don't think they need personally, they don't need cap right now. Like cap's their least of their worries. They're not going to need it for a while. So
Exactly.
that that 6 million cap and 4 mil next year is nothing really. I think they'll get through that with no issues. Um, the good thing about the second conditional pick with the Devils is if they make the Eastern Conference Finals this season, that turns into a first. So yeah, they're a good chance. They weren't that far off the Eastern Conference Finals, and that was their first season being back. I expect they'll be one of the stronger teams in the Metro again and in the East. So yeah, look, they're a good chance to make the Eastern Conference Finals. So look, they could have two first round picks next year in the draft, which would be phenomenal. And that their first round pick, I believe that it's gonna be minimum top five. I don't see them being any higher than what 27th, 28th.
Yeah.
Um, so-
Yeah. Having a look at this team, it looks good, like all right, it's serviceable. But if they get rid of the assets we're talking about, then 100% I couldn't see him getting over 30th. Um,
well,
that's where I'd cap them
that's the
at
thing.
if they sell these
Can
some of these
can you
assets.
see them? Can you see them making the playoffs with this team?
Not with Carlson. You got a defender who's not a defender that eats, like, basically you get three, four, third liners for that price in a sense,
Mm,
and there's
yeah,
there's your depth. So not with Carlson. If they trade
no, I
Carlson,
look,
I could definitely just Carlson, and you keep Couture, Hurdle, and Vlasic. I could see it. Also, depending how Karkin and Black would go, but yeah,
mm. I think you'd need to add some pieces. I still think even if you get rid of
yeah,
Carlson, they need to bring in
but
3 or 4 pieces. But yeah, to me, I don't think I don't think this team can make playoffs. Like even if you got rid of Carlson, brought in a couple of pieces, I still think they're too far gone. Um, and I think for the longer they postpone as well, because this team isn't going to win a cup as well. So make playoffs is one thing, but winning a cup's another. Because do you want to be left in no man's land? Do a Philadelphia Flyers. Sorry for the drive-by. It's the second one I've done. I apologize.
vroom
But
vroom.
do you want to do a Philadelphia Flyers where you just sit in no man's land, making playoffs one year, not making it the next, making it the next, not really ever doing anything, and then you're just left with frustrated fans. You don't know what direction you're headed in, or do you just turn around and go, "Nah, we're gonna gut the shit out of it because we know we're not good enough. We know we don't have enough assets to make this into something. So gut the shit out of it. Take what you can get because you look at it and go, all right, well, LeBlanc is probably gone at the end of the year. They'll trade him at the deadline. Duclair will be traded at the deadline. Coonan, if they can get something for him, maybe he's an RFA. They might keep him, but he is potential. Barbanov is a UFA, so he probably goes at the deadline. Oscar Lindblom is also a UFA. So they've got a lot of UFAs coming up at the end of the year that are probably going to be moved as of trade deadline. And then you've got, again, the question marks around Vlasic, Carlson, Couture, Hurdle. It's why I suggested the potential of doing one a year, focus on getting rid of Vlasic this year. If you can move a second, try to, perhaps, but maybe you only move the one. You focus on the other UFAs, get as much as you can for them. And then the following year, you might get rid of Carlson or Couture
Well,
now that it's
yeah.
only 3 years.
My problem
So,
with that, I know it's not your real point, is that I think this is the only year you can get rid of Carlson. Uh, if you don't
mm,
get rid of him this year, I don't think you can get rid of him in the following years, because I don't think he does what he did this year, and his value is not going to be nowhere near what it was. So yeah, I think it's either Carlson this year or you're sitting with him for the rest of that contract.
for the rest of the contract. Which I honestly I think sell him while he's high. So if someone's willing to take him and take 7.5, I'd sell him now 100%. If someone came in with the offer, it's just the question is there an offer there? Is there a team that's willing to take him, and are the Sharks willing
Mm,
to meet in terms of cap? Because that's my only concern. Is like I agree with you. I think you obviously sell on a high, but is someone there? I think they've got to at least get rid of minimum one of these players this year, and it will require them to eat some of the cap. So I say Vlasic because that's the least amount, right? You can probably 3.5 mil, but then again, the question is, does anyone even want him for 3.5 mil? Because you still got him for 3 years.
mm.
So he's still. I don't think he's probably good enough to even pay 3.5 mil. So that's where the trouble comes. They've got to get rid of someone. They've got to do it quickly because they've got to get the assets. There's no point holding on to these players. They're not going to go anywhere with them. You need to get the assets. But again, they've got all of those UFAs coming up that are probably going to be moved at deadline. So yeah, look, I think Mike Greer, you've got your work cut out for you.
Mm.
This year is going to be it's literally going to be the foundation. If he messes this up, it could be that it's not even 5 years till they're back in playoffs. It could be longer.
Yeah,
So
well, my
yeah,
concern is his talk on that he doesn't want to eat cap space for Carlson. I know you want to get as much as you want, so you kind of say the higher, the highs are the high and the lows are the low type of thing. But it that is my concern, and it does put in doubt question for me that is he the right GM to do that rebuild if he's not willing to do that. I
mm,
have liked some of his trades though, like Mackenzie Blackwood, good risk addition in a sense, just for a sixth round. They brought in he brought in Anthony Declare, good addition. Definitely going to be trade bait at deadline. Like he's done good moves, but when you do say that, that does worry me. Um, and obviously they got rid of Timo Meyer last year, so yeah, it's just it's just the thing of if you don't eat cap, like if you're 100% willing not to eat cap for it, then I would replace the GM. Um,
mm,
because I don't I,
yeah.
I don't foresee a world where that's not possible. That's possible.
Well, if you don't eat cap, it's literally going to be 2027, and the Sharks are no better than they are now.
Yeah,
But they're losing Couture for nothing. They're losing Carlson for nothing, or they're finally trading them for nothing. Like
pretty much.
by that stage.
You think of it like stocks or assets in a sense. All San Jose's assets are tied up in Eric Carlson, Couture, Hurdle, and
Mhm.
Vlasic. Like that's the assets because they don't really have the draft picks. Their prospects aren't really that great. Besides, obviously they did pick up Will Smith this year and whatnot, but that's like their prospect pool's pretty lacking. So all your money, all your investments is in these people, and that would be good if you're going for playoffs and it was a playoff team. But it's the complete opposite. So you need to switch those assets, and if that requires eating the money, then you got to do it. I don't think there's any debate about that. I think you have to do it.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I think if if they don't, like I said, I'm predicting they won't be back to competitive, playoff sort of potential hockey for 5 years. But I'm saying right now, if they do not move the likes of um like Carlson, Couture. I think they can hold Hurdle.
I think yeah, same.
But if they don't move Couture and Carlson for prospects and draft picks and stuff, you're just delaying it. Like you need to start to build that prospect
Well, that's
and
4
draft
years. You
pool.
probably add what 3, 4 years for the rebuild. You're looking at like an
Hmm.
8 years till you're in playoffs again if they hold into these
Yeah,
assets. But
yeah.
yeah,
And all that's going to lead to is Eklund's wasted years, Will Smith's wasted years, any sort of good picks, because they're probably going to, again, they're probably going to get a top 5 draft pick next season. if you're 8 years until your rebuild's finalized, that draft pick next year is 27. And
Mm.
like, yeah, he's still a good age, but you probably wasted 5 years of that guy's career because you refused to make the
And
calls
that's
now.
assuming you can re-sign them, because obviously you have to re-sign people, and some people don't like rebuilds. But I guess we can end it
Exactly.
there. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll be releasing more videos like this on each team and other potential videos going forward during the off season. And don't forget to leave a comment below on what you think of San Jose. How long do you think this rebuild is going to be? What do you think they have to do with the Eric Carlson situation? Do they move Couture? Can they even move Lesic? And how their prospect pool is going to work out? And do they make playoffs in the next 5 years, or is it 5+ years? But yeah, let us know, guys. Until next time, catch ya.
Yeah. See you guys.